and welcome to Talking Law podcast, where you can hear barristers, judges, solicitors, managing partners and more talk about their careers and lives in law. I'm Sally Penni MBE. I'm a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester and the Joint Vice Chair of the Association of Women Barristers and the founder of Women in the Law UK. This episode is supported by DLA Piper. DLA Piper is a multinational law firm with offices in more than 40 countries throughout the Americas, Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. They assist clients with legal issues in a large number of sectors, including employment, finance, real estate, tax, and arbitration. Find out more about DLA Piper at dlapiper.com. Today, I'm interviewing Alison Fagan. Alison is a construction disputes partner and the head of infrastructure funds sector group at DLA Piper UK LLP. Ali provides risk management advice on distressed, high-value or strategically critical infrastructure projects for a wide-ranging pool of clients, from private sector partners to delivery contractors. Ali started by telling me about her journey into law.
So I have a very traditional journey into law in that I studied law at university, at Lancaster University, went straight on and did my LPC here in Manchester at BPP.
Brilliant.
And then I got a training contract with Addleshaw Goddard.
Wow.
Worked there for, I think, 8 or 9 years.
Oh my goodness.
And then came here to DLA. So relatively straightforward route through, albeit it hasn't probably felt so straightforward at times. But traditional, I should say.
Yes. So, I suppose quite a straightforward journey, really, into the law. And I wanted to ask you, actually, because I know I don't want to reveal too much about you, but, you live in the Northwest. Mm-hmm. I know you go to London an awful lot for work purposes. Was that a deliberate decision? Because often, we think about the legal world and the success of those leading in law as being based in London. Mm-hmm.
I've always travelled between mainly Manchester and London, but other cities as well. And I suppose at one point, have I thought, do I need to relocate to London? Possibly. Mm-hmm. And my funds practice is very much London-centric. But I've just found that over the years, I've been able to manage working between the two. I get to live in the Northwest with my family and with lots of outdoor space. But I travel, most weeks to London and always have.
Yes.
So it involves a lot of time on the train. But I don't mind that. I quite enjoy it.
Yeah, well, it allows you to listen to my podcast.
Indeed.
or not, or fall asleep to it. I don't know. But it does actually provide another option, doesn't it?
Definitely.
For people who might perhaps be thinking it's all London or a big city or nothing.
No, I've always felt that I've managed to secure really high quality work, and I've never felt I've missed out on that work by not being based in London. You do have to do a little bit more of the travelling, stay over, a bit more in hotels and be away a little bit more. But I think that's a balance worth striking to get the quality of the work that I want and the exposure to London. It's a great city. There's so much going on, so many opportunities, so many great people. But ultimately, there is something sweet about being on the train north at the end of a long week.
Yes.
And seeing the hills roll into view.
Yes.
And knowing that I'm home.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So tell me, what is infrastructure? As I said in the beginning, it sounds very grown up. And I'm thinking, what does your day-to-day job entail? So, for example, if I was sort of thinking about, becoming a solicitor, looking at all the different areas, what is the infrastructure as a specialism for you? Yeah,
that's a really interesting question, because it's not an area that I trained in through my degree. You don't do it on your degree course. It's not an area that's available to people on an LPC necessarily. And I only really knew infrastructure construction existed when I joined Addleshaw's.
Yes.
And I had an absolute powerhouse of a supervisor there, a great woman who just inspired me with all things construction and infrastructure.
Yes.
And in reality, it's the world we live in. It's the buildings that we occupy. It's the roads we use. It's the airports that we like now to frequent more often than we have in the last couple of years.
Yes.
It is the world, the practical, operational world that we live in. And for me, I'm a litigator, so all of the problems that can arise when you build great bits of working, living, breathing infrastructure.
Amazing. Is it really quite practical? Because the other thing that struck me when I was looking you up and looking up the sector is that there aren't many women. No. Which is consistent with engineering, in the business world, in the real world, if I may say so, construction and tech and all of that. There aren't many women at all. No. So for you, one, to have had a supervisor who was female, and secondly, then you yourself being a woman, how is that? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad to say it's a changing position and changing for the better. So now, when I walk into a room for a client meeting or an event, there are other women.
Yes.
Often, which is good. And multiple other women, not one other woman, but a number of other women in the room.
Yeah.
But historically, that's not been the case.
No.
And that is a real shame because it's a superb area to practice. I think actually being a woman and the way that we approach certain tasks and certain work makes us really fit with the practical, technical nature. I am not good at maths. I am shockingly bad at maths. I was awful at science at school. So I am living, breathing proof. You don't have to be good at those sorts of areas to work in what is a traditionally male-dominated environment. Right. But I ask a lot of questions and I sit with a lot of technical experts, and when they're describing polymer science to me and it's completely going over my head, I'm very happy to say, I don't understand that.
Yes.
Take me back to the beginning, walk me through it. I need to know everything that you know. And actually, I think that is one of the key skills, because if they can explain it to me and I can then explain it to a court as a litigator, then I think that is a strategic advantage, not a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
And there've been some inspiring women in my history and in my past.
Yes.
And hopefully I can now be one of them. My team currently is far more women than men.
Wow.
So it really is a changing picture.
Absolutely. Crikey.
Yeah, I'm really, really proud of that. And I think it's indicative of the industry more generally in terms of the construction and infrastructure sector.
Yeah.
There is an awful lot of support and push for diversity, of all forms of diversity in construction and infrastructure. And law, we've been a little bit behind that push. Yeah. But as I say, hopefully this is not a question we should be asking in 10 years' time.
No, absolutely. I think my daughter, and indeed your daughter, shouldn't be having it in that time.
No, I hope so.
Yeah, and maybe if they're having it, maybe for different reasons, I suppose. I wonder then if that's one of the reasons you've been quite keen to be involved in the law network here, which is all about gender. You've been very supportive of our annual Women in the Law UK annual conferences, which have been excellent. They're so wonderfully attended, and I have a horrendous amount of emails of people saying how brilliant it was and all the rest of it. I wonder if they are some of the reasons have led you to that, being involved in that network. So I was interested in what's happening at DLA generally on gender, and what you've been pushing, because you're one of the few law firms with a black managing partner, although I think she's got a new role now.
She has. She's managing director for UK and Europe now, so she's onwards even higher than she was just a few years ago. No, it's something the firm takes very, very, very seriously, and it has to be the top of our agenda, and is the top of our agenda. We're not where we should be as a firm, and as an industry, I think we're not where we should be there either. But I think the key thing is a commitment to make real change, practical change.
Yes.
And interestingly, the role that I have on the Legal Alliance for Women, our sort of law network in the Northwest, we did a consultation recently out to the business to say, look, tell us what we can do, what we should be doing as a business to remove some of the barriers or the perceived barriers to entry and success.
Yes.
And it was incredibly interesting to just get perspectives from everybody. And some of the things were so small, really minor things that actually we can change really, really easily. And we will change really, really easily. There's bigger things that will take more time and more policy issues. But for me, I think we've just got to have more in-depth conversations about the realities of the business we work in, and how we can improve it. We're not perfect, absolutely not. But if we can acknowledge that and come up with ways to help, particularly our junior team members, then that's our commitment, and it's an absolute imperative.
Yes. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm now wondering, if someone was starting their career then, and they were fortunate enough to have trained at Adel Shaw's, as you did, or at one of the big, I don't know what they're called now, they're still called Magic Circle or not, because I'm just showing my age, aren't I? The top 10, top 20.
Top tier.
The top tier. And at the bar, we're a bit hopeless with that. But what career advice would you give? And then I'd like to ask you some questions about sort of family life and, the changes there. Yeah. What career advice would you give to somebody? And I asked you this question, I don't know if you remember, when I wrote Talking Law Book 1, which was celebrating 100 years on from when women were allowed to practice law. And I was showcasing what the profession looks like 100 years later, what women and men were doing, and how the profession looks so different to 1919. And you gave me some interesting answers then. So I'm just curious, if you had maybe 3 tips or something on career advice, or whether entering in the law or staying in the law, that you might be able to share with us.
Yeah, this is a tricky question because there's such a range of possible answers, and there's so many small things and big things. But for me, I think one of the first things I would say to anybody entering the law is really go deeper in your reading and your understanding. When I do the interviews, have done at AG and here at DLA for our vacation scheme candidates, the key for me is the depth of understanding and knowledge. Don't just read the website. Find things that really interest you and then go off down that rabbit hole, reading more and more and more about a particular issue or an initiative or an incentive. Because I think the more you read, you can develop an authenticity into why you're giving certain answers in interview. Because, the understanding of what we do, why we do it, what you're passionate about is different for every single person in the legal business and legal industry.
Yes.
And I just like to have engaging conversations with people about things that they're genuinely interested in.
Yeah.
So for me, the first tip I would give is just be really interested in the law and the business and certain elements of the law that you wish to practice in, and really think about that. Sort of built into that, talk to people. I think ask questions of anybody who you spend time with about the law, about what they do, about their interface with the legal profession, their interface with a particular sector. I'm a big talker, as you well know.
I love it.
I like to engage. There's only so much, having just said read a lot, I also say there's only so much you can get from a book. So talk to people and really get that depth of understanding and knowledge of what we do and why an individual might want to come and join us in the profession.
Yeah.
And then I suppose going one step further on is just get experience, and be creative about what that experience is. We here have all the set routes into law. So we have the apprenticeship scheme, we have our training contracts, we have our vacation schemes. It's all really formal and really structured.
Yeah.
But for me, some of the best experience you can get is far more informal. For me as a litigator, go and sit in the court and watch. Yeah. Just soak it all up and experience it and understand it. Or, go and offer to work in a business, and it doesn't have to be a legal business, any business, family business, or use all your contacts. But then really think about how that business interfaces with the law. Do they have an in-house legal team? Yes. Do they have legal problems? What do they do about their legal problems and requirements? I think we can get more creative with our experience as juniors, with our junior team. that it doesn't have to be a formal, vacation scheme and training contract.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you've done some of that more informal experience building, when you then go to the formal schemes and answer those questions, it's really authentic.
Yes.
And it comes from a true experience. Or,
yes.
You can explain how you worked in a family business and there was no legal interface whatsoever, and explain why you think that might be, or what you would do if you were the managing director of that company. Get a bit more creative, because I think people can get a bit channeled into, well, these are the boxes that I need to tick.
Yeah.
And I think that will only get you so far. True depth and authenticity are for me the big sort of pointers that I would have.
About the apprenticeship, how does it work? And is it working on the job? Because quite a few law firms have got it, but I'm not sure it's still so clear for people in the way that we at the bar have been used to it for God knows how long.
Yeah, so for the fee earning practice, in terms of the trainee solicitor route, they do their training contract for 2 years and they spend 6 months in 4 different departments with us.
Yes.
And move around. And hopefully they see the bright side and come to litigation and express a wish to do construction, in which case they join my team and we have a lovely time. But you move around, and I think that's great, because you get the different experiences of different areas. If you'd have told me when I walked in the doors on my first day that I would be an infrastructure litigator, I'd have laughed. I said, no, I'm going to be a corporate lawyer, or I'm going to be, some other form of lawyer that I knew. So I would never have planned my route to be here, doing something that I now absolutely love. So, the training contract allows that formality of movement around 4 different, and other firms do slightly different timings, but similar concept. And then there's all sorts of other things in terms of pathways into law, that we do. So lots of schemes, and I think it's just the idea of getting that experience for me is just fundamental. Because it's a huge commitment to say you're going to be involved in law, and to not know what it is or understand the job before you walk in is a risky situation.
Of course it is, laden with lots of costs and
absolutely,
and the expense as well of coming into the profession and the solicitor's profession. Now, I want you to tell me a little bit about well-being. The law is hard work.
Yes.
We know in firms it's hard to work, and certainly at the bar. And there's a high rate of burnout. So I'm wondering, and then we've had COVID for the last 2 years, so that's been a complete shocker. And I must admit that some people are better at it than others. We talk a lot about it. There's bar well-being and lots of active things. So I'm wondering what you do for well-being. Or what would you like to do? Sometimes, we have these grand ideas, don't we?
Yeah. So I'm quite an outdoors person. So for me, one of the worst things you can do is sit me at a screen from 8 till 6, and that's what all I'm allowed to do that day.
Yeah.
So I like to get out. I like to be in the fresh air. I've always ridden horses, so I still have a horse, and I go and ride whenever I can. But for me, moving away from the 4 walls of an office, away from your screen, and working or spending time outside of that box is critical. So if I feel I'm getting a bit stale with something, or I can't just make a piece of advice work or something, I will pick up my computer and go somewhere, to a bar, to a coffee shop, to a spa, just to move away from the office environment. For me is just lifts a weight, and actually I consider that to be well-being associated with work, because it means that at the end of the day I don't feel quite so sort of drained. If I sit at the screen all day, you can just feel so drained. And I think we are quite a traditional business, and people think that you have to come to the office, or go to your home office, log on, stay there for the day, make sure that green light on Skype is showing as green so everyone knows you're in the office, and then finish at 6 and that's the end. That just hasn't ever really worked for me. I will work on non-traditional hours. I'll pop in and out. I'm rubbish at 3 o'clock. From about 3 till 4 I'm just awful, so I like to go out onto the gym, or just move away, just move around and get different experiences. And different pictures in front of your eyes, I think, can make you more creative.
Well, there's lots of studies on it, so it's quite interesting that that's how your mind works, and you're still performing. Your productivity is high.
Yeah.
So, do you think post-COVID we'll ever return to what we knew before 2020? For years we've talked about flexibility and so on and so forth, and I'm just wondering what you think. Do you think we'll ever go back? Because my husband's a non-lawyer, and he's not been to an office of any description for now about 2 years. And I think there are pros and cons, of going into an office and well-being. But more and more in our sector, when I talk to different people, men and women, they're like, oh yeah, 2 days in the office, great, or 3 days is great, but I'm really enjoying just the 2 days of working from home. Yeah. So do you think we'll end up in that sort of hybrid? Or,
definitely. I don't think we can go back. I don't think we should go back. I don't want to go back to that expectation. I've had a young daughter through COVID, and I've spent more time with her because I have breakfast with her. Aww. I'll pop down and have lunch sometimes. I'll be able to finish it and play with her, put her to bed, and then I might do some more in the evening. And, I love being in the office. I love the people I work with, the team, the camaraderie. But I can get that and have, for me, a more healthy balance in terms of my family life, but also, as you say, my own well-being. Sitting here in the office, as lovely as they are, from 8 till 6 in front of my screen, is still sitting in front of a screen in one place. And I think we've just got to be more dynamic and accepting of the fact that we're no longer attached to a desktop computer that you couldn't drag around. I can work from anywhere. I can work from anywhere in the world. I can certainly work from a local coffee shop or a park or a beach if you need to get just some fresh air. So I don't think we can go back, because I think that's certainly not where my team want to be.
Yes.
But also I don't think we should. I think it genuinely will help balance our lives more if we can be more flexible with how and when we work.
Yeah, absolutely. I know my dog will be happier if that comes in to the bar. Now, listen, you're what I call like the kind of traditional look. You're blonde, you're quite tall, and I'm wondering here whether you had a favourite fictional legal character. It's clearly not Rumpole the Bailey like mine. When you were growing up, who may have inspired you. And then I'm also interested perhaps in sort of, whether you've got a favourite book or a book that has inspired you or has some meaning for you.
So this is a bit cheesy, and I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, but obviously my name is Ali, and when I was growing up, I watched Ally McBeal quite a lot in my formative years, and I'm not sure I would hold her out as a role model particularly, or somebody that I seek to emanate in my day-to-day life.
But she was great.
Well, she was quite, it was quite powerful, and it was a gang of quite a lot of female characters, and they were doing some cool stuff.
Yeah.
And, I think that stuck with me, and actually, when I was on my interview for a training contract many, many years ago, they asked me, why do you want to become a lawyer? And it was my first interview that I'd done, and I said, because I like Ally McBeal, and laughed, and the chap interviewing me didn't, and I thought, oh God, wrong answer. But then, to be fair, he did say to me, mine was, and then named another film sort of character. Yeah. So everyone's got one.
Oh, absolutely. And this is why, actually, I think things like podcasts are important, because if our role models come from television, which is great, but you never see the real lawyers like you or the other 60-odd people who've been on this podcast, then we never really feel them. So it's important to have that, and it's important to know that, lawyers are real, and they do like Ally McBeal and law and whatever.
Absolutely.
Whatever else.
I must say, actually, my most inspiring character in sort of not law strictly, more politics is, I'm a big West Wing fan.
Oh, yes.
And CJ Craig of the West Wing.
Yes.
Whenever I'm sort of, feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, I think, oh God, I can't do this thing. What would CJ do? And sort of channel that moment.
Yes.
I find her inspiring.
Oh, super.
But the references that you need in your life.
Totally for those moments.
Exactly.
You mentioned something that I'm going to come to in a moment, but I just wondered, what about a book before I go on to mine?
Totally different. I love The Count of Monte Cristo. I read it over and over again. I just love the depth of the story and the layers and the complexity, and I just find it, it's a bit slightly magical, slightly far off places.
Yes.
And it's really long, it keeps me focused on something for a prolonged period of time.
Yes, that's a good choice actually. We've got a book club, so we're always keen to look for books.
I have to commit a long period of time for that.
I know, I was thinking that. But I want to ask you, Ali, about an issue or a topic perhaps which affects us all, which is imposter syndrome. And I kind of now feel and talk about it because I think, well, if, for us in England, one of the greatest lawyers that ever lived, Lady Hale, and this documented in articles, but specifically in her book, Spider-Woman, talks about her imposter syndrome and incidents of imposter syndrome, and one of which was when she went to Law Commission. Then I think all of us are okay to admit that we suffer from it. And it's that feeling that, you're an imposter, someone's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, you shouldn't be here or whatever. So I wondered if you'd experienced and how you got over perhaps some of your imposter syndrome.
Yes, I've experienced it throughout my career, always. And I'm not sure it's something that you ever get over.
No.
As a woman in the law. Certainly I don't think it's anything I've put behind me and never to darken my doorstep again. I think it's just something you learn to manage as you go through. So in the early years of my career, I sat with, at that point, lots of men who knew lots about construction contracts and lots about the way things were, and I would sit in meetings and think, that's not right, that answer that's just been given isn't correct. Or so my way to deal with it then was just to become an expert in. So when I spoke up, I absolutely knew I was right.
Absolutely.
So that was almost pushing imposter syndrome to one side, using the tool of knowledge and knowing that I was right. Spending longer researching things, spending longer understanding things to make sure that when I did say something, it was right.
Yes.
So I think that's how I dealt with it in the past. I think now I actually get quite a lot of support from the people that I work with. So returning from maternity leave was another time when I thought, God, can I do this? And where's my pen and my security pass to get into the office? And oh my God, I've got to put a seat back on it. And at that point, my tool that I used was to rely heavily on the people I work with. So one of the chaps in my team, Robin, has just been there, we've worked together for a long time, and he had my back and covered for me at times. And almost when he didn't, I knew I had the confidence in him that he would.
Yes.
So I didn't feel like an imposter. And then slowly but surely I've come back, and now I'm absolutely fine. And I'm going through a stage where, things are on a roll. So different times, I think you need different tools and to rely on different things. Back in the day, it was knowledge. When I moved here to DLA, I'd moved from one firm to another and thought, oh my God, what have I done?
Yes.
How am I going to do this?
Because the studies show that actually women tend to overstay in places of work, or a bit too long. Yes. They progress because they're comfortable and they fear, and they don't have the confidence to move on by way of progression.
Yeah. And I had all that. I stayed too long, and I moved and was just absolutely happy, but then did think, oh my God, now I've actually got to deliver all those things that I said I could and would.
Yes.
And there was a time when I was terrified. But to be honest with you, I think if you're not having those feelings, sometimes you're not pushing yourself. And is imposter syndrome actually...
It's a drive.
A good thing.
Yeah.
Would I want to live my life without it? Probably not, because I wouldn't have, pushed myself in different areas and different ways. So I think it will be here, certainly with me, forever. Yeah. But I think I'm okay with that.
Yes.
As long as I have these tools to be it people and support and the ability to talk about it as well.
Yes. Because actually, men suffer from it. It's just that they don't really talk about it as much, or haven't been doing. It's a bit of feels like it's a recent phenomenon, but we've actually known about it all along. The knowledge point is really interesting, because that's what I use now. So goodness knows what I'll use once I, become an old fart.
But I think it's just flexing, acknowledging that it exists, understanding how it makes you feel, and then thinking, right, well, at this moment in time, what are my tools for dealing with it?
Yes.
And they may be different. If I go into a new area, or when I took on the role as international head of infra funds here again, I probably went back to my knowledge again and thought I need to really book up here, you know, I need to brush up a little bit. So I think it's just, flexing how we deal with it rather than trying to either make it not exist or B, thinking of it necessarily as a bad thing.
Yes. Now, I want to ask you about partnership and female role models. Specifically at work, you have this phenomenal woman called Anna Davies. Right?
I do.
And I don't like her title because I think it's something like PA or something. And I'm PA. And she's not like Anna at all. Now, I think there are about 100,000 people who listen to this podcast. I don't think my PA is one of them. So she will hear me saying this. My clerks might hear it, but that's a different story. And actually, she's an executive assistant.
Yes.
And in law, they are crucial.
Yes.
And I just wanted to really ask you about what role she's played in your own development. You know, you're a high-flying lawyer, and the women sometimes in our lives might be our cleaners, might be our grannies, maybe our mums who are picking up the children sometimes, who are saying, go for that application, you've got it.
Yeah.
You've had, Anna for a long time.
Yes.
So what impact has she had on you, and how important it is to have just somebody who's also got your back in a different way?
Just huge. You cannot do what I do or what we do on your own.
Yeah.
And Anna makes sure everything happens. And I'm a big believer in there's only so much, I hate the phrase, I wish I could come up with a better one, but bandwidth that any one individual has.
Yeah.
And if I had to do or engage with the things that Anna does, I would not be able to do everything else that we have to do. So Anna and others like her are fundamental to being successul in this business. And without her, I probably wouldn't be, I definitely wouldn't be sat here on time.
I know.
with the right information doing this. So no, absolutely massive. And executive PA is important, but it's anybody who supports you. So since I had my daughter, I rely so heavily on, I've got a nanny, I'm very, very lucky too, but I've got my mum, and Granny comes on a Tuesday and looks after my daughter, and, my husband. You want to be so independent.
Yeah.
That's sort of the nature of who I am and how I've always operated. And actually, the more senior I've become within DLA, then having my daughter, the more I've realised that is a pipe dream and one that I must just, forget, because without Anna, without all the support, without all the help, you just can't do it. I can't do it.
Yes.
And I think it's quite a hard thing to come to terms with, actually.
Yes.
You can't do it just on your own.
No, and I remember having coffee with you before you were pregnant, actually, and you were here one day, then you were there one day. I thought that sounds like my old life, and then you had your daughter, and I was thinking, it'll be really interesting to see the shift and the change and how all these different people kind of affect your life now, because we do get used to it just being us.
Yeah.
Well, Ali, I know you weren't expecting me to be asking you about Anna Davies, who has been brilliant in all our conferences as well.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing with us. Can I ask you a final question, I suppose, which is this? It's about the law. I've said this on numerous talks and panels and keynote speeches. It's like a marathon, not a sprint. And sometimes people are very keen to get on. And so I wondered what you thought, whether it was advice or tips about longevity.
Yeah, it is a marathon. It really is. I don't know. Ask me probably in another 10 years. But on a serious note, we lose too many people at critical points. We really do. And that's something that I'm quite passionate about now, because, we don't have, even at DLA, but it's not a DLA specific problem, it's across the industry. We don't have enough senior female role models.
No, or let alone black senior.
Of course, and absolutely. And, I still sit around a partner's table and look and think I am, one of a few, and that's not good enough. And when we sort of looked at it internally, everyone's saying, well, we don't have the candidates for partnership.
Yes,
It's that point, we just don't have the numbers to put through. And my point was, it's because we've lost people years ago. And for me, we've got to be less structured about how we work with women at more junior stages of their career. So if, to ask somebody to come back from maternity leave and pick up that day, utilisation targets are the same, expectations are the same, jump back in, it's all okay. It's not all okay, and you can't jump back in, and it's not that easy. And if that's the expectation, then that's our problem to deal with.
Yes.
Because if we make it too difficult at that point, which I think we have been, that's why we lose people, and that's when we lose people.
Yeah.
And it's been a real eye-opener for me being out of the business and back in, because I see it now.
Yes.
I see it more clearly. And I think there are small changes that we can make to make that retention at that critical point easier for people, because it's really hard. I love my job, I love the firm, I love the law and the area that I work in. I'm really passionate about it, but it's really tough. And then you add having a baby, or not just having a baby, having a life crisis.
Oh, totally. Caring responsibilities,
Exactly. Yeah. There's so many impacts or challenges. My father was very ill and unfortunately died when I was a junior lawyer. That powerhouse lady that I spoke about early on, she just made sure it was all okay. She just said, essentially, screw the policies. We're not going to do that. You just do what you need for a short period of time. And I did, and was very, very thankful to her. And so I came back and was fine and able to carry on. But, I think we've got to be more flexible and more dynamic with how we deal with situations to retain our really good people.
I totally agree with you, and talented people. There are too many talented women, as I say, including and especially minority women, because the stats show us they're even worse off. We are, and then we've lost them. We've lost them.
And you can't get people back.
No.
It's too hard. I think once you've been out for a long time, it's much harder to get people back and re-engage. So we've just got to do better. We must, and we can't. You can't stick to structures that are not working. And at the moment we have structures and expectations that are not working. And until we change that, you're not going to get the senior role models and the people coming through and the partnership candidates, because they're gone too soon. So this for me is fundamental to what we have to do. And I've been very privileged in terms of being able, I went on maternity leave as a partner, came back as a partner. I have that flexibility inherently built in. I have incredibly supportive partners here, actually. Not that I will admit that to them, of course.
No.
But, there's a chap called Paul Giles who brought me into DLA, and he's been brilliant. He's got a wife, and she's a lawyer, and they have children. So, he was almost saying to me, stop pushing yourself so hard. It's okay. So there's got to be more support. There's got to be more flexibility, but true flexibility. And we've got to understand, going back to your original question, it's a marathon. We need to keep people through the challenging parts of their lives and their careers, because they'll be here for a long, long time if we do.
Absolutely. And in your answer there, the importance of allies, male allies, of course, and the importance of you using all the privileges that you've outlined to me in this interview to make change. And when we identify the privileges we have and then identify how we need to use it, that's also the way we make change.
Exactly. And some things are small, minor changes that can be hugely helpful. The ability for somebody to go take their child swimming on a Wednesday afternoon. A newborn or a 6-month-old, 12-month-old baby, take her to swim class, because actually for a couple of hours out in the afternoon, you've got a much happier mum or dad. And then, okay, they've not done some work on a Wednesday afternoon, but do you know what? Doesn't matter. They'll do more on Friday. Or,
of course they do.
They're such high achievers anyway that they're probably 10 steps ahead. That's not a policy per se, but it's something we should just do, and it should be normal to be able to do those things. And that, I think, small things can make quite big changes in people's experience of work. And then there's the obvious big things as well. We need to make sure that we are addressing problems, and if there are barriers or challenges, that we are talking about them and changing things.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a doer, I don't like a lot of chat about just
pretending
to do things. I actually want to deliver some practical things. So that's what we try and do here.
Fantastic. Well, I feel very empowered now,
Good.
Alison Fagan. So I look forward to hearing more. Thank you so much for talking law with me. It's been really fascinating. And thank you for your time and your support for all the work that we do at Women in the Law UK.
Oh, I couldn't be more delighted to be involved. And Women in the Law UK is just a phenomenal power and force for good. So anything I can do, or we at DLA, we're always happy to join on, because it's such an important part of the industry.
A big thank you to Alison Fagan for talking law with me, Sally Penni MBE. And thanks again to DLA Piper for supporting this episode. Do visit dlapiper.com to find out more. If you would like to support Talking Law, then please get in touch. You can find and follow me on Twitter at SallyPenny1, or search and follow me via Instagram or LinkedIn. I also have 2 books which might assist in your career, whatever stage you're at: Talking Law and Skills, and Talking Law and Careers. My new legal textbook is called A Practical Guide to Dealing with Vulnerable Witnesses in Criminal Courts and Beyond, published by Law Brief. Do make sure you catch up with previous episodes of Talking Law, where you can hear my interviews with guests such as barrister and TV presenter Robert Rinder MBE, and campaigner Gina Miller, and The Secret Barrister. Thanks to our production team, Sam Walker and Michael Blades at What Goes On Media. Goodbye for now.